Well, hello and welcome to continued supplemental learning for our End Times Biblical Prophecy. This is for lesson 35, the hero on the white horse. And so this is in preparation for our main lesson on this topic. And so this is just a little bit of extra information that you can use in preparation for lesson 36. But as we begin, I do want to point your attention to some review as we get ready to look into our main topic for tonight. So again, this is lesson number 35 from our End Times Biblical Prophecy. The title of this message is The Hero on the White Horse, Part 1. And this is supplemental teaching. The main teaching will occur Sunday evening, February the 1st, 2026. As we begin, let us look at a review. Now, we have talked about that there are several pauses in the action. The pauses were looking at some background information, but the 7-year tribulation period is really occurring one thing after the other. We have the first 7 seals, and then the 7 trumpets, and then finally the 7 vial judgments. We've talked about how the first 6 seals, they appeared to be in the first half of the tribulation. The trumpets may be close to the midpoint or just after, but the vial judgments, they are right at the end, probably in the last weeks or months before the return of Jesus Christ. And so we have reached the end of the tribulation period. Now Jesus is about to return and establish New World Order. So let's look at these 7 vial judgments. First, we have grievous sores. Second is the sea is turned to blood. We see rivers and streams turn to blood. The sun scorches men on the earth. There's darkness over the beast's throne. The Euphrates River dries up. And then lastly, there is a great earthquake as God's wrath is finally poured out. So if you were to take an assessment of those, they're so serious that any one of them could cause humanity to really just collapse so quickly that it necessitates these happening right at the end of the tribulation period. But before we move on, I do want to make a note. It is your pastor's opinion that the return of Jesus Christ occurs between the 6th and the 7th vial judgment. Now, the reason I believe that to be true is just looking at the sequence of events. I want us to consider the 6th vial first of all. And so what I believe happens is the Euphrates River dries up, and then all these nations, they come across and they fight against Jesus. And after he destroys them, that is when there is a great earthquake. That would be the 7th vial. And the landscape of all of earth changes significantly. Mountains flee, islands are moved, and all this is in preparation for the millennial kingdom. But let's look at the 6th vial judgment. What I believe happens is, again, the Euphrates River is going to dry up. That's what I know is going to happen. But if you look here at this map, you see that the Euphrates River really creates a natural barrier between all of the countries to the north, east, and west of Israel. They must cross the Euphrates River if they are to go on foot. Now you might say, well, how come they can't come by sea? Well, they could. There's nothing that's going to stop them, and they probably will to some extent. But we're talking about vast armies, hundreds of millions of soldiers. And so they are not going to easily be able to come by sea or by air. It's just not logistically plausible. And so they will no doubt come by land. The drying up of this river will create a will remove that natural barrier. Also, we see here a larger picture. You see all nations really can come to Israel once that natural barrier has been removed. And so all these nations are going to be headed towards the small little nation of Israel. Revelation chapter 16, verses 13 through 15 reads, And I saw 3 unclean spirits, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, for they are the spirit of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and to the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And so we see the lying spirits. They're portrayed as frogs, but really they're probably either men or women who are indwelt by a spirit that are able to do miracles, able to do impressive things, and they're able, more importantly, to manipulate these kings. Realize the kings, they're not going to come to the Battle of Armageddon thinking that Jesus is going to speak and they're going to be destroyed. No, they think they're going to have a chance in defeating him. Otherwise, they would not gather with all their troops. And so these lying spirits, they're going to gather all the kings of the world to come to meet at the Battle of Armageddon. But there's a contradiction here. Now, if you haven't studied this out, you may not see the contradiction. You may not understand where it is. But let me tell you where it is, and then we'll talk through why it's not really a contradiction. So the contradiction is that the Bible says that the Battle of Armageddon takes place in the Valley of Jezreel. The Valley of Jezreel is not where Jesus will return. Jesus will return at the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives and the Valley of Jezreel are not neighbors. They're about 60 miles apart as the crow flies. So farther than that, as the crow doesn't fly, if you had to take traditional routes. So let's look at a few pictures here. First of all, where does Jesus return? Well, we know that he returns at the Mount of Olives. This is the place in which he ascended and where he is said that he will descend. Zechariah chapter 14, verses 3 through 4. Let me correct that. Zechariah chapter 14, verses 3 and 4. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west, and there shall be a great valley, and half of the mountain shall be removed towards the north, and half towards the south. So Zechariah says that when Jesus returns, he will put his foot down on the Mount of Olives, and that will cause the mountain to split in half, causing a great valley in between. Also, in Acts chapter 1, verses 9 through 12, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfast towards heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up at heaven? The same Jesus which was taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. Verse 12 here. They returned unto Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem a Sabbath day's journey. And so we see that Jesus ascends in front of his disciples' eyes, and he will descend the same way, according to the angels. Where? At the Mount of Olives. So again, if Jesus is going to be at the Mount of Olives and the battle or the armies are going to be in the valley of Jezreel, isn't this a contradiction? Well, next let's look at where these armies are going. So where are they going? The lying spirits are going to get them to come to battle. Where are they coming to? Well, they're coming to the valley of Jezreel. The valley of Jezreel. You can see here in this picture, there is a large opening there. That is the staging place where the battle will take place. Now, Revelation chapter 16 and verse 16, and he gathered them together in a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. Armageddon is just, it means the valley of Megiddo, which is also the valley of Jezreel. Here in this picture, you see a more modern day depiction of this valley. So there's a lot of land there for the armies to gather and to prepare for this battle. So what we need to understand about Bible prophecy is that this is not a traditional battle. We have historically, we know that there have been 2 world wars, but even then, these were a few nations that were gathering portions of their armies together on the battlefield. This will be all nations, and this will be all of their soldiers trying to get to this one location to fight. China alone will have over 200 million at their disposal that they're going to be trying to send to this battle. Now, with today's standards of organization, they would have to stage the troops, they would have to stage their provision, their supplies, the tanks and vehicles, the soldiers themselves, the ammo, all of that takes room to store. If you were to organize an army the same way we do it today, modern, this valley could hold about 90 million soldiers. That's a lot of soldiers, 90 million. If the soldiers were packed in like a parade, like sardines essentially, you could get as much as 300 million. So, I mean, this is a big valley. You can get a large army there. We have yet to see such a demonstration of power. The point being, the Battle of Jezreel is not where the battle is going to take place. This is a staging place. This is where all the armies are gathering to prepare for the battle. They will then march towards Jerusalem, where the king is said to rule. So why Jerusalem? Well, that's where the king's throne is. This is where Jesus is going to return to. Right now, if you were to go to Israel, you could go to the Mount of Olives, and you could take a walk from the Mount of Olives to Jerusalem, to the temple, and it would take you about 15 to 25 minutes, depending on how fast you could walk. Jesus's throne is Jerusalem, probably the temple itself, as he's probably going to go in and cleanse it, as it will have become a den of thieves again. And so all of the armies of the world will gather in the valley of Megiddo, but then they will march towards Jerusalem. Again, we see this is a map here. Jesus will return. The armies are going to come up through the Kidron Valley. We'll talk about that here shortly. And that is where Jesus will meet them at the Kidron Valley as he makes his way to the temple and to Jerusalem. This is an aerial shot of the map of Israel. Megiddo there on the north, that is where the armies will come in and be staged, and then they will go down the coastline and make their way to Jerusalem. Here is a map of the same thing. You see Capernaum at the top, then Megiddo, that's where the armies will gather, and then they will come down the coast, making their way to Jerusalem. Joel chapter 3 and verse 2. God says, I will gather all the nations, and I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Also in Joel chapter 3 and verses 12 through 14, God says, let the heathen be wakened and come unto the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit and judge all the nations round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe, and come get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, and their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Now, we're almost done with this teaching, but this is an important thing to note, and that is the valley of Jehoshaphat is not the valley of Megiddo, nor is it the valley of Jezreel. Remember, Jezreel and Megiddo are the same valley. The valley of Jehoshaphat is also known as the Kidron Valley. Now, I want to show you this picture here. This is what we looked at earlier. Jesus will return at the Mount of Olives. He will walk to the temple where he will rule from Jerusalem. In between the Mount of Olives and the temple is the Kidron Valley. This is the valley of Jehoshaphat. The valley of Jehoshaphat is also called the valley of decision. It has three names. The word in Hebrew for decision, haras, means cutting, verdict, determination, or decisive judgment. It is the valley of decision, a decisive judgment. This valley, again, it's between the Mount of Olives and Jerusalem. Jesus will descend. He will start his way to Jerusalem, and he will meet these armies in the valley of decision, where he will judge them swiftly and promptly, dealing with their rebellion. So that is it for our supplemental teaching. Again, this is just preparation for our evening study, as we'll go into more depth about the return of Jesus Christ and this battle. But this kind of sets the stage for how the battle is going to take place and how the return of Christ will be handled, biblically speaking, through prophecy. So I hope that this was a blessing to you. I hope that you learned something. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of your smiling faces.